Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's, this month I should say, Toolkit of the Month. We are continuing to talk about webinars and wrapping that up for our topic for January. And just remember to set expectations about this particular webinar. It's just a short kind of walkthrough to go through the Toolkit of the Month and to talk about how to use it and have some commentary on it. So I've gone ahead, I think everybody has already downloaded their toolkit from our site. And so again, just to refresh your memory, this month we had our HighRoad U Webinar of the Month was all about using webinars for lead generation. We just had our inbound lunch bunch of the month was about really how webinars are used from an inbound methodology approach to be able, again, to use for lead generation and how to think about them and how they can help us with our developing new prospects and being able to nurture them through a funnel so we can use them, you know, in figuring out how we can grow. And that, of course, is our theme for 2017. Everything is about how we can grow. All right. So let me go ahead and just start going right into our toolkit. So if you've downloaded, you've noticed, number one, that this is a little bit different than other toolkits if you've been a consumer of those in the past. Typically our toolkits are Excel documents, you can plug and play with them. This one is a webinar, and there's a very specific reason for why we set it up this way. So if you scroll down, you can see that this is truly a Word document template. And that is because this purpose of this template is to allow you to, we're always trying to accelerate. We're always trying to help you be a better marketer and help you to make a better business case internally, help you to be able to substantiate the case of what you're trying to make, whether you're trying to pitch to one of your more senior executives, whether you need to be able to show ROI to the finance team, what have you. We're always trying to give you those tools to help you be buttoned up. And so again, in the marketing community, we're big on sharing those kind of templates and tools. So we put this one together so that you can actually come in here and come into the Word document and rip off our header, meaning like get rid of it, and footer, be able to take those out, and then actually just put in your own logo right in here, maybe even just delete this page. But basically, you want to use this exact template to truly actually be, you're going to lose the cover page, lose the header footer, put in your logo, your footer, and actually then use this. You're going to fill it out. So truly the meaning of template, right? So you're going to actually use it to help make sure that you have not forgotten anything about putting together a solid webinar plan. And you might say, hey, you know what? We've been doing webinars for so long. We have this thing down to a science. For many, many organizations, it's absolutely true. But I will challenge you with this. Many times what we see is the webinar plan is really a instruction manual of logistics. It's really along the lines of, okay, at this, at this hour, 2 days before, we're going to have a walkthrough with the speaker. Then on the day of, log in 15 minutes beforehand. Then on the day of this, we're going to do this. Then we send out the post-webinar email with a survey link. All those are great. That's also incredibly tactical. Nothing about that strategic. It is completely about how to run and produce a good webinar series, which absolutely is critical. This plan, however, is really about saying, look, we need to pitch a new idea for a new series, or we need to start a webinar program. And this is heavily weighted onto the side of content and what I'm going to do with these leads. So how would I set up really a pitch to put together a webinar plan that I want to get funded, let's say, and how I'm going to be able to do that in a way that I can show, I can create a business case for it to be able to say, look, here's what I'm aiming to do. And that's the purpose of this webinar plan. So the tactics and the logistics and all of that, that is a different document that's on the production side of producing webinars. That's not the topic of this template. This template is about stepping back and saying, for this year, do we have a solid, and if you have a webinar plan, I think you should refresh this once a year at least, and start saying, do we have a solid plan for what we're going to do with our webinar series? Has our webinar program gotten stale? You know, do we need to refresh it? Do we need to break it into chunks? Do we need to break it into different types of speakers? Is there a different series we need to do? Do we need to create a new one, as we were talking about before, that's perhaps free, that's not based on selling webinars, that's based on us trying to generate leads for our association brand? And so this template, the purpose is to help you methodically go through, sit down, and think through what you're going to do with this program. So this is at the program planning level. So whether you have a marketing plan as a whole for the entire kind of year for the organization, this would be one aspect, or this would be one element that would go over into the master strategic marketing plan. And I know a lot of us always would like to have that on paper. This is a great way to, get it on paper and help you to expedite the process of getting it onto paper so you can share it with others. So many of us are going so quickly, it's all in our heads. We don't have time to actually communicate it out there. But in the world that we're in, transparency is the #1 thing. We want to have, there should be, if you're legitimate, there's no reason to hide anything, nothing secretive. You come one, come all. So the more that you can put things down on paper and share it within the organization, right, the healthier of an organization you're going to have. So that's the purpose of this particular template. So a couple other comments on that as you read through it. So again, here's what I would do. I would go ahead and download this, take the Word document. I would delete off this page, change my header and footer, get rid of this first page, and then I'd kind of start. You could also just save the whole thing as PDF and take out certain pages if you've got the full version of Adobe Acrobat. So just kind of quick little how you can use the template and make it very practical for your purposes. So a couple other things I was going to note about the template. We've kept in embedded links throughout. So give a look for that one. If you actually go and you actually click on these as your live links, and they will take you over to our partner Demand Metric. They'll take you over to their site, and this whole document is full with kind of little nuggets of gold. So little marketing gold in here. So I can go through and really go through listening to, a best case template or best practices, etc. as we go through. So I just wanted to alert you to that's a real value add, that we have kind of embedded this extra media rich learning within here. So like I said, let's go on down. So as we said, we ripped off we got rid of the first page, we took out probably the header footer, and now you're back to now putting in your logo, etc. And then here's your title page. So this is where you're going to actually, put in your pitch for your, program to generate, let's say, new, new young professional members, whatever the target is that you're trying to do. And of course, we're always at HighRoad thinking from an aspect of growth. That's where we really specialize, is in how do we grow with you and your organization. It could certainly be something on the retention side as well, and how you can deepen engagement. But I will say, in 2017, everyone seems to be fully focused in on, we have got to get going with growing, right? So we've got to have the new tools in place, we've got to have the new methodologies in place, and we really need to understand how can we grow in 2017. And that might be measured differently in your organization, but it could be revenue, it could be we need new event attendees, we need new members, volunteers, whatever the case might be. Okay, so we're going to fill that out. And then we have our table of contents. And what's great about this, I don't know about you, but I hate doing tables of contents. It's just about, it's up there with, I don't know, root canals, very painful to do in Word. So this is nice because it's all done for you. And if you keep your formatting within kind of the template, all the page numbers will line up perfectly. So now you've got it all buttoned up and it's done, and you can look like you've got it completely together, so you can move on. And then we get really into the meat of the actual template. So again, just talking through it, we have kind of our program summary and objectives, and we're coming through here, and it's asking, why do you have the webinar program and what are its objectives? So what's kind of nice about this, now the way you want to use the template is it's telling you what you need to do, right? And it's giving you, again, some other business case, so there's another little marketing rich nugget. The key of actually using this is just to come through here and delete this out, get rid of it, and then you put in your answer to the question. But I would actually tell you, keep the actual question, right? There's a reason that we kept it nice and big. If you want to change the colors, go for it. but there's a reason that we broke it out that way from a look and feel perspective. It's very easy to understand the white on the blue background, what we're looking at, and making just the font bigger automatically simplifies it. It makes it look simple, okay? And when you're trying to put in new ideas and you're trying to get new pieces across, and this is coming up a lot with marketing automation. Everybody's jumping on the marketing automation piece of it and saying, well, it's time to invest. We need to do a new program plan for this. The factor of making fonts larger and having a bright color to them is an age-old classic. That's what they do in elementary school. That's how you learn your ABCs. It simplifies it. It makes it fun. It makes it palatable is what it does. It makes it easier to understand. The smaller fonts you go, opening up the spaces between words, getting some more vertical height in here. These are all little tricks of the trade to help it make it more palatable. So anybody who doesn't know a topic, maybe you're coming out of left field to someone in a different department and you're explaining this, you set yourself up to lower down the barriers for them to reject it, right? You're already kind of saying you're setting yourself up for success. And oftentimes, especially if you're going in and you're working with individuals who've been trained from a different discipline, maybe they've been coming from a more bits and bytes background. You're working with the technology teams. You're working with more straight data, straight numbers kind of disciplines. They're coming from one type of training. Usually the marketing communications people are coming from a more systems level integrated training, and a lot of times the two don't coordinate so well. We don't mesh so well. We're not speaking the same language. This type of template and doing some of these little tricks of the trade helps you to get your message across and helps to articulate what you really are trying to convey before you ever show up, right? Because a lot of times we have a misalignment between the communications and more like the IT data side and things like that, because we're coming from different training. We're not trained the same. Our brains aren't the same. We're not communicating the same way. So some of these things are just a little tricks of the trade to help you to work with, it depends. There's a huge gamut, right? It runs a spectrum, but it will help you to do a better job of, again, setting yourself up for success. And at the end of the day, you're trying to align the organization, right? The purpose of marketing is to align the organization around the strategy about how you're going to do the pricing, the positioning, the promotion, and the products, right, of what you're actually trying to bring into the market. So that's what you're trying to do here. And this template is just trying to further your mission. Okay, so we go ahead and we fill that out and we get rid of all that. And I would, again, keep the question. Also, just another tip, keeping things in question format allows us to quickly scan a document. Many organizations, you've got executives, they don't read, they skim. So keeping it in a question format, whether you know it or not, opens up the brain and says, okay, this is something that's piquing my interest. And it's as soon as I start with the question, why, I'm already queued up now to listen. If think about it, why? I'm already queued up to hear the answer. So just by using a title that starts with why, instead of saying webinar program and objectives, webinar program and objectives, that's much harder to read than why do you have one? And I would again challenge you to keep the actual question, the why, what, where, how, when format. It helps people, again, using some elementary school principles to be able to consume content more quickly. Again, we have attention spans less than goldfish nowadays, we all say. I think it's 4 seconds. So we have to be able to do whatever we can to be able to grab the attention, open up that window, and be able to insert our little bit that we're trying to convey to the recipient. All right. Okay, so that's, we put in our purpose. And also, just as the one last thing on this, go ahead and write that the last, right? So you should always, here's what I do. I have some kind of notes and things I have in mind, and I kind of put them off on a whiteboard or paper or what have you, notepad. But what I do is I often find, and when counseling people, if you start with trying to write the summary first and the objectives, you will get caught up on this thing and spin your wheels, and it will take you time. What helps, which I think is the most effective and efficient in being able to write kinds of marketing plans, is to actually, or any sort of paper in this regard, is to do this piece in the last step, is the executive summary or the synopsis or the objectives or the, you know, kind of the what you will get, what will you learn. Even if you're writing your webinar descriptions, the learning objectives and the what will you learn, I think those should come at the very end. It's much easier to start with who should attend, and then, you know, what the topic is, and then come back to the objectives. So that's just another little tip there, to skip that, and we'll come back to that and finish it at the end. So going into then the next section, this then breaks down your actual webinar program, and this could be a series or individual ones. It depends how big of a webinar you're doing. And you know, here at HighRoad we have a series, so I would do this for a series at a time, like the entire analyst brief series, and this is going to be the marketing plan for that. You might have one, you know, co-sponsored webinar that you're doing with one of your strategic partners, and it warrants having one plan just for the webinar because it's such a large undertaking. So whatever will fit the bill, but the same exact template will, you know, will suffice. So the second one is the pre-webinar event planning. This again starts to, now we get a little bit faster because we start right in with the audience. Now I say that because most of us will say, oh yeah, we know who this wants, we want this to go to. But what I think is great is the demand metric customer profile template. And here's where audience comes in, and what we should do, and note this, is that when we are describing what who the people are that we want to target for this webinar, you notice when the examples they give are not member or non-member, right? They're actually far more descriptive in being able to classify who the target is for this, who's the target consumer for this content, who will be my content consumer is what I call them. And it's important that we actually take the time, because when we deliver the webinar, when we write the descriptions, when we pick out the images to promote the webinar, all of those should be surrounding the user, right? Remember, we're HighRoad U. U is for user. So everything is about being user-centric. So taking the time to actually outline this bullet and keeping the who are they, I would again keep the question and then write your answer underneath it, is really critical. Because we say it's obvious we want to do this, but actually a lot of times we skip the step. And I say that because one of the things we do all the time is we work on personas with associations. And personas are the reason we have to do those because they don't yet exist. And personas help the organization to fully focus in on who's the target consumer for this. If I'm not clear who I want to attract, right, I'm just going to get everybody under the sun. And it could be that that's what your webinar is for, but likely you have a purpose and you're trying to say, I'm trying to pull in this group of people, and I'm going to, when I'm even writing the plan, I've got these people in mind, and then I want to make sure that I recruit the speaker that's going to go with that. I want to create the content that goes with that. I want to have all of that buttoned up so that everything I put out there is attracting back the right audience, right? So that I can actually be able to move forward with these people. So again, we're moving into a world, or we're in a world now, where it's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? And so I'd much rather have 5 good prospects to be a member company than I would to have 15 just kind of all over the board, and none of them are really whom I'm looking to work with. And that's a difference, right? This is no longer just a mass market, you know, advertise to everyone and just kind of churn and burn. This is really being purposeful in saying, we are going to put this out there, this webinar, and it's taking a lot more care. And if you notice, because the tools have gotten easier in the logistics, the movement is coming off of, if you start noticing, the emphasis is going away from the logistics and the tactical pieces and going into the actual content and the craftsmanship of the content, the purpose and the real meat of it, the depth of it, is what now really counts. If you notice, a lot of the other pieces that used to be seen as this is so critical, right? Like, oh, is there, you know, you have to have the moderator for the webinar and all of these pieces, it's gone by the wayside. People are fine with it being casual. They're fine with that piece of it. They care if they can hear, and they care if they get good content, right? On when we're talking about webinars. And that's because something is fundamentally shifted in kind of our norms of perception for what is considered quality. It's a very interesting kind of study of of our culture today. But getting very clear on who they are ties directly into personas. And we have, wouldn't you know it, both toolkits and webinars about personas, for sure, about building them. But this is a hook here between your webinar plan and the personas that maybe your overall marketing team is working on, or that exist out there, but being very clear about who's going to use this toolkit, or who's going to use this webinar, or who's going to use this briefing series is going to be very critical, and for you to understand not only how you can direct it, but how you're going to measure it. How will you know if you're successful, right? So you have to be able to identify, you can't boil the ocean, you got to be able to have a target market, and then constantly say, for that target market, how are we doing at chipping away at that, okay? So it just can't be, again, different thing, can't be that, it's just not the numbers, can't be a quantity game, it's got to be the right people, and event people know this. This is the event marketing to a T. They've been saying it for years. They've been saying, look, it's not about just having butts and seats in event language, it's about having the right butts. And we're seeing that now play through now on the digital side as well. And it used to just be, hey, we're happy with just having, you know, volume. Now it's not okay to just have volume. Nobody just wants to see. So that's what, by the way, that's why digital metrics like open rates, click-throughs, website visitors, it's not enough. Those are just like butts and seats, it's the equivalent. We don't know who they are. Are they the right people? Are they the people who are actually going to take the action that we want them to? So that's where the emphasis is on today. So more time spent on this seemingly easy question of who are they. We're going to spend more time of actually outlining who this webinar series or program is intended for. And then when we can measure that, we can say, here's what we intended and here's what we got. And did we have a match, or did we find some interesting findings that we didn't expect? Okay. What do they need to know? That kind of gets back over to our objectives and what the purpose is, what we're trying to convey to them in this one particular webinar. And then here's another one too, which is often, it's a classic in kind of, you know, in your marketing kind of piece of it, of like, we're understanding where they now get their information. But I think it's interesting that we put it now into the webinar plan, and oftentimes how often it seems simple, but we don't know the answer. And by the way, this is one of the big reasons that organizations want to move to marketing automation, because what they're trying to understand is who else, where else, how else are our members or our, you know, current customers, if they're, let's just say an attendee or something like that, they're buying your certification programs, where else are they getting information? Answering this question is one of the reasons it's so important to have our website tracking codes connected into our email, connected into our social media, to our banner ads, etc., so we can actually start to track people and understand them without having to ask them. Now, ideally, we would ask them as well. Where else do you get your information? Right? But some organizations are not, we're not there yet and feeling like we can ask all the time. So one thing that organizations want to do is they want to put in marketing automation so they can understand some of this and get at least some insight without having to be intrusive, or they consider it intrusive to the member to ask these questions, right? But just for marketing automation, I can understand, you know, if you're coming through Google, if you're coming from a referral site, I can track you through retargeting ads. I can get a sense of where you actually are coming for information. Okay, so if you know this, great. But one of the keys also to your webinar program would be to actually kind of chip away and get some insight on this answer. Because what's great is, you know, again, with webinars, we can ask pre-event questions, we can ask post-event questions, so we can ask the question in our post-evaluation survey, Where else have you gotten the information on this topic? Did you find it helpful? Would you recommend it to a friend? Right, kind of net promoter score types of pieces. But there's no reason we couldn't do that ahead of the webinar as well. So this very well might be one of our objectives for our webinar program. We're trying to understand where else you get information. And that's a key, because we need to know how we can compete with that, how we differentiate ourselves, etc., in doing that. All right. So the next kind of big section is talking about content, talent, and delivery, seeming, again, very straightforward, right up until you get to the message part. And that's, again, I think, especially when you're working with a lot of associations, you know, a lot of you guys are working with paid sponsors or paid placement for webinars, or you don't necessarily have an expert topic, a speaker on a particular topic, etc., or that they want to go kind of one way and you want to vet it. So one of the things there is just really being clear on having a consistency of your message, right? That's a critical piece there. So this kind of section in here will help you get a little bit more refined in stating what you need to do. And again, this is a great tool, this message mapping tool. So again, another little nugget of gold we've put within there for you to be able to pop out to it and be able to download it and watch a little bit of a video here. It's a great way to kind of give you a visual about how you're doing. And I love this. Bubble size is based on credibility, and it's basically giving you almost like a, if you're familiar with the good old Boston Consulting model of kind of the stars and dogs kind of piece, but it gives you a nice mapping tool for being able to understand where you fit. Do you resonate? Effectiveness, right? Best messages are up here. They've got a high level of credibility, high level of ease of use, right? And they're interesting as well, right? So that's kind of a nice way to be able to do that. Actually, that would be a fun way to evaluate your speakers after a conference rather than rating scales, would be like to go ahead and map them, right? Show the big bubble where they are. There will be a lot more of an interactive way for you to be able to work with your attendees to find out how that went. All right, so then there's some kind of notes in here about formats and lengths and things like that as you go through. We'd all love it if every one of our speakers only ever took 1 to 2 minutes per slide, but you have to be a pretty expert speaker to be able to go at that rate. And nowadays, you know, what's more in style is just have a slide with like one image. And so the presenter, depending on, might take more than that. So, you know, you need to be able to put the format out. Do you want a deep dive? Do you want it to be like a Ignite session? You know, how fast? I think also one thing I would add in here is actually putting in some guidelines on cadence and how fast you want to go. We often kind of survey and find out that people actually like the speed that we go at HighRoad, which is faster than you would, you know, typically kind of expect on, you know, a lot of times they're told go slower, go slower. The world's speeding up. You need your speakers to speed up, right? We all have a lot to kind of get through, and we all have a lot that we want to convey to one another. Then there's some nice notes here on talking about finding the right talent, etc. Just a note, a really good presenter evaluation tool also within here, and also kind of an RFP template if you really do need to go find a new webinar platform, you know, provider, or in this case, probably also learning management systems kind of provider. A lot of them bundle it in. So a couple things in there also that you can use. And then once we go there, I want to make a couple of comments on promotion. Promotion is one of those things that we want to focus in on when it comes to webinars, especially if we're talking about growing. And so we have just, our entire Inbound Lunch Bunch this month, and I was saying our HighRoad U webinar this month, talked about webinars as lead generations. And so it's telling you right here, webinars lend themselves to a promotion through a number of different channels. And so again, I would say this is a great one to start with and say, okay, have we maximized our exposure for our webinar series or program or individual webinar as much as we can, because we want as marketers to pull every little cent of value out of it. We want to get every droplet we can of value out of the money that we spend on everything we do. So webinars are great because they're typically very low cost to produce and are very low cost to distribute. So then we want to say, can we maximize the exposure we have of getting people to the webinar? And this is just helping you think through all of the kind of pieces to say, you know, have we kind of checked the box? So this would be you putting in all of your different channels. And so you have the obvious ones like, you know, putting it onto your webinar event registration page and your website. Again, that's predicated on people know to go there and people are going to happen, you know, to be there. Okay, we all know that doesn't happen. You have to drive people to those pages, typically, unless it's like your staff or maybe board, maybe. So how are the drivers? What are the drivers to most kind of websites or landing pages? Email, direct mail, social media, your actual internal teams, right? We're seeing more and more associations actually starting to build out kind of some business development kind of teams, et cetera, especially around conferences, especially around certification programs. Again, webinars are a great way to get to know, you know, for exhibitors to understand what do you guys have for us. You might have an entire webinar series just for exhibitors to really help out your conference team. So all sorts of ways to do that. Advertising, that's a big one we talk about in our State of Digital Marketing and Associations report. Very few of us are spending enough money on digital advertising. Most of us have, you know, very scarcity-based budgets for this, and we haven't yet reallocated to put money into this. And again, that's going to be a good spend because it's going to get us in front of people who we don't now know and who are not current members or customers or donors or registrants, you know, constituents, whatever you want to put that for your organization. Another one that's really good to note is the partners. So we talked a little bit about this in other pieces as well. Affiliates, partner, what's called channel marketing is going to be huge for 2017. It's just too expensive for us to all go it alone anymore and foot the bill. So finding ways to leverage partners and exchange those kinds of, you know, having some reciprocity between organizations is going to be big for the webinar plan. So having something in there that hooks in your affiliate program or how you're going to work with partners is great. And just as a side note, our HighRoad U webinar we did this month showcased CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association, and how they're doing this so well. They're doing great lead gen through using webinars by offering kind of reciprocity between them and some other kind of sister organizations and offering discounts to do that. But it's well worth it for them because of the lead gen that they're getting. They're in a very niche, you know, industry, and so they're able to then partner up with these other associations that have a much broader sweep of membership to be able to pick out just those, you know, individuals who are in finance in the construction industry. And it's working wonders for them. So having kind of a partner plan is another piece to really have, helps you to say, I've thought this thing all the way through, okay? Then you notice third, we get to webinar logistics, right, about execution. And like I said, most of these are no-brainers. This is not the struggle here in the association market. 9 times out of 10, we have this stuff down to a science. I will say, you know, again, putting in polls and surveys and always getting better for that. When we talk about, again, I'm not talking about the poll within the webinar, because I think organizations are very good at that. Though I do think they need to speed it up. It's a little bit of it takes time up from the content. But one thing to note is that when you're doing your registration or when you're sending out your thank you email for coming or we missed you and etc., having more interactive features like polls or surveys or little benchmarking pieces around the webinar is something that can help to continue to enhance engagement and help people to get more involved. They need to be more involved, you know, in today's world of digital. So I think we can cruise through that section. 3.2 is management. Again, really nice checklist to make sure that you're on your game, right? You can just pull down the checklist. You can download it. We were talking about before. Another kind of little nugget of gold. So you can download that checklist. It allows you to, you can pop out, put in your brand. You can download it right there. Okay, you can pop out your brand and then have everything you want, so you can have it nice and buttoned up, and you don't have to start from scratch. You can always modify, but wow, if we can leverage, you know, other tools that are kind of the tools of the trade, you know, why not? Definitely record the webinar, right? So today's world, if we're still always focused in on the live event, and everybody's just saying how many people are live, we've missed the boat. Because for most of us are out there, I don't know if most, but a large percentage, it's definitely generationally driven. You want it on your time when you want to watch it. So you might very well know that you're registering only to say, yeah, I absolutely had zero intention of ever showing up for it. I just wanted the recording so I can watch it, you know, listen to it, what have you, on my time. Obviously, that's different if you need to actually provide CPE credits or CLE credits or something like that, and there's a constraint. But still, perhaps there's a way you can still record it and offer it, knowing that this is no longer going to count towards credit towards your certification. But being able to record it still seems to be something that a lot of us don't do. And this is another great digital touch point, because if you record the webinar, which then is a little plan for how you're going to leverage that piece of it and continue to allow it to generate leads for you. It's out there now on its own, generating leads. And again, you can put it out. You have another thing to release. You've had all the email sequence, the social media sequence, post on LinkedIn about the webinars coming. Now you have the recording of a whole other reason to announce it back out to the market, right? Now you can bundle them together. You can put, here's 3 together, here's a kit, here's this, et cetera, et cetera. So it allows you to continue to take more and more content and put it together. Some ideas there on being able to seek feedback. Again, a nice little tool in there about receiving evaluation. And again, trying to have nice questions in there that work for you, that are not along the lines of getting feedback on logistics, right? Feedback on logistics is good, but I would actually say, why not either don't ask, because you'll hear from it anyway. I don't know that you really need to ask, because if somebody had a problem, they're gonna write you and you'll find out. Or having a section that says, okay, here's feedback on the production of the event, and put it there. But what you really are trying to get back is the feedback, hopefully, on the speaker, the topic, what did you learn, was it worth your time, what else would you want to see from us? That's really what you're trying to get to, right? You're really trying to get to understanding the topics of interest of your webinar attendees. And then I love that we love, often forgotten, so much of us, especially if you've done events for a long time, as soon as the live event's done, your plan ends. That was it. The live event is done. What else is there to do? I send out the thank you and I'm off, to the next one. That's typically how it is in the world of events. This is helping you to think through what you're going to do and what the plan is post-webinar. So how am I going to package up the content? How will I deliver it to those people who attended versus those people who didn't attend? Where will I store it? Will I continue, like I said, will I roll it out and say the on-demand version is now available? Do I post it in my blog and it goes out? How often do I need to do it, right? Is it something that needs to happen right away? Again, we can't emphasize enough in 2017, trying to get an understanding of the time factor of your audience is, I think, something that is well worth it. We've been working with a lot of organizations the last couple of years and watching, again, no one will be shocked to hear this, even though we don't change our marketing plan. When it comes to events, people are registering sooner than they used to or later. Which one? Later. So they're registering far closer to the actual event date. And that makes event planners and associations very, very nervous. But it's because we're inundated and our time frames, in some ways have lengthened out where we can tell you where we are next summer, a year from now. But in some ways they've really shortened, they've really gotten quite short. So it might be for a big conference where I know I really need plane tickets and I'm a volunteer committee member or something, I might have that on the calendar. But for the mass majority of the members who are doing these webinars or doing these like one-day conferences or like a 2-day seminar, the time frame for registering for those has really, really shrunk. And it's getting down to kind of just-in-time types of pieces, yet we continue to market, 6 months, 8 months, et cetera, out. And what happens is people tune out. They're not focused in on it because it's no longer relative to the time frame in which they are. And we're getting more and more isolated into kind of day-type compartments. Like, what do I have to do today, in the next day? And this idea that, I have 3 weeks ahead of time, I have all this extra time, has just gone by the wayside. So again, you're seeing, increase on the virtual, et cetera, but understanding from here, start thinking about it. In my webinar series this year, what are the questions that I could get answered, right? What are the questions? Am I seeing a fundamental shift from live to on demand? Am I seeing that people are, what are they actually consuming this content? These are all really, this would be a great place for you to actually document the questions that you have about webinars. Again, not necessarily just about the logistics, but questions about how are we following up? Maybe we're following up too soon. Happens all the time. There's always this kind of pressure. We have to get it out right out the door. Sometimes it's too soon, especially like you're leaving a live conference, virtual pieces, webcast. Sometimes we need to understand. And again, how can we understand it? By getting out of what works for us, the organization, right? It can't be that I have it on my list that I have to get out this email and I'm going to get it done. That is irrelevant in today's world, irrelevant. What you want to do from your staff, organization and your time management perspective is irrelevant. What's relevant is, when does the user want it? When is it going to be useful? It's the utilitarianism of the user. When is that going to be useful for them? And part of your post-webinar event marketing, it is perfectly fine to say, here's our plan for following up, but here's what we want to study. These are the types of questions we want to ask in this program so we can really understand what's going on. They have a nice bullet in here as well to talk about methods and to remind you that it's not always just about email, right? There's other communication channels. And if you use other communication channels, especially let's say on a live webinar, meaning like on like a non-sold member versus non-member only webinar, when I post that out to social, like, hey, did you miss this? Or now available, the on-demand webinar for X, Y, and Z. Again, it gives me a whole new reason to have a new touch point, to get out there and get more eyes on my webinar, and to have it's like having a second webinar. As a matter of fact, many organizations are now doing on-demand replays. So I set the time frame up on the schedule to say it's going to be Friday at 3, but it's not a live speaker. I'm just actually replaying the webinar. I'm doing a replay, right? And maybe I have a session, just a Q&A with the speaker. All those kinds of things allow us to extend. It's called the repurposing of that content. But if we can put it in there and we can remind ourselves, this also helps to have other other people within your organization understand how it all fits together, right? Because in 2017, we are still fighting the, what do we get out of social media, right? Why are we still doing this? Why do we need these extra little pieces of software? Why do we get all this stuff what is this stuff, right? And there's so much new software out there, and there's so many little tools and techniques, but many, many, many organizations don't understand past email and website, right? And so that world of the other piece of how I can repurpose content and get in front of other people digitally is really the piece that we need to emphasize in this plan. And that will be interesting to people, because this document becomes a teaching tool, it becomes kind of my plan, and it also becomes my way of kind of doing a self-check to say, okay, here's what I set out to do, what did we get out of it, right? So it shouldn't be surprising that as a corollary, I write the plan, and then once the program's done, I can write a program evaluation that mirrors this and says, here's my results. Or I can put it right after as another paragraph right here to say, here's my results at the end of this time period of whatever that was, individual program or the whole series, etc. So section 4.2 gets into lead nurturing, which we've touched on quite a bit. It kind of tells you, you know, some of your goals and whatnot, how we want to do that, and gets into some of the definitions of lead funnels, like marketing qualified leads, and how you're going to do that, and helping you to think through, okay, if they showed up to the webinar, does that really mean that they're ready to join my organization as a member? You know, if they're coming to the webinar, does it really mean that it's ready for me to ask them, you know, do you want to buy a course on, you know, certification course? It could be, but it's asking the question. It's asking you to define, okay, you know, if they come to the webinar, what does that mean, right? And we were talking about webinars in the context of lead generation. So if they're coming to the webinar, we're trying to understand something about them. So we have to have that framework of inquiry. And what we're trying to get ourselves here to do is write down, what are we trying to understand? Could be that we don't know. We just don't know. And the first time we do this marketing plan, it is literally to set baseline. We're taking a guess. It's a hypothesis, you know, educated or not, like a hypothesis is what we think will happen. And we're just trying to say, let's run it one time through, set some sort of baseline from which we can measure. Okay. This is helping you to start thinking that and using some language in there, get you a little bit used to kind of more, you know, sales-driven kind of marketing kind of speak than communications-driven marketing, that type of stuff. It's getting closer to the data side of understanding funnels and moving through cycles to develop kind of opportunities of who's going to buy, right? So again, marketing is farther over towards data than the communication side, which is, you know, over kind of a little bit the other way. So it's getting us used to being able to use data to say, what is the data telling us, right? Last piece of this, or not last piece, but 4.3, it's going to be, again, all sorts, again, touch points of helping you to think about how you're going to repurpose, right? So that's a nice kind of piece. And then section 5 is just absolute gold. It's helping us to really formulate and put down on paper, okay, here's our KPIs. Here's how we're going to know that we had a great program, right? So we're going to say, here's the metrics that we think tell us something about this endeavor, enough for us to be able to say, from this number, we conclude that this is way, you know, it answers our question. This is the way the market's going. This was a successful topic. This is not of interest. So KPIs are a way to take an event, an observation, some sort of occurrence, and put a number on it. And now the number is still open to interpretation, but you're saying, I have a schema that I want to use. I want to say, if someone does these set of actions, right, ultimately I get this number, and this number, if it's within this set, this range, means something to the business, right? That's what a KPI kind of is. Highly, highly correlated here. Lead scoring. So a lot of people are now bringing lead scoring to us about marketing automation. It's the exact same type of idea. It's the idea of setting up an index, some sort of indice, an index to say, okay, for this kind of behavior or this stuff that I can't, it's qualitative. How do I quantify it? How can I take qualitative occurrences out there in the world, or some whole set that are seemingly, we can't tell if they're all discrete events, but we want to combine them and understand them, okay? Lead scoring is a way to do that. It's about how to put a number to a set of occurrences so I can have some sort of way of understanding it, right? Of understanding what it means. That's important. KPIs are important. Lead scoring is important to understand through webinars, because otherwise everything we do is linear and discrete. And we start saying, we came to this one webinar and we only look at the registration numbers of the one webinar, right? And that's all we look at. Now we go to the next webinar, look at that webinar registration. And what we don't do is connect the dots. This is the difference sometimes between the technology kind of training and the marketing training. Because marketing is trained to take discrete data and combine it together to say, do I see a pattern? Is there a pattern here? Is there something here that I could actually prove through statistical means to say there's something happening that's bigger than these discrete events are held together? Webinars are an awesome way to look for correlation. Are things relative to one another? If I can say I put together a webinar series, or I have 3 different webinars on different topics, or sorry, the same topic, similar topics, but put them into different markets, can I understand how that topic, where the importance level is that topic across different kinds of populations, right? Understanding how different events, if I go to 3 webinars, what does that mean, right? Does that mean that I'm closer maybe to becoming a member? All those kinds of questions are important within a webinar plan, within any marketing plan. But particularly for a webinar, they have some additional kinds of abilities to have really interesting KPIs. Because I have the opportunity to have so many measurements around one person's behavior, because they have to register, they might pick a topic, they have a length of time that they provide to me for how much they're going to stay with me, they have the opportunity to provide an evaluation afterwards. I have so many opportunities to get touch points, and it's just a bundle unto itself for each webinar. If I can string those together, I can really start to get some insight as to what people are doing within a webinar program. That's why having this full functioning webinar plan is so much more important than like logistics. Who cares about logistics? If you could figure that out, like certainly the logistics are, how hard can it be, right? But that piece of it, understanding how we can fit those different webinars together to understand how they fit into our KPI. If I can do a set of webinars and then tell you, hey, this is where we can grow our membership base, or this is where we can pick up the next member company, or be able to get our next set of 3 sponsors, yes, that is absolutely a well worth it endeavor, right? And that's what your marketing plan is trying to convey. You're trying to understand. That's what you want people to understand. If we can get this thing going, we are really going to have greater insight for the business. So it's giving you some ideas here. Obviously, the most obvious is like the reg numbers, etc. Looking at live versus etc. This is a good one. How many people new versus returning, like we were saying? Is there a pattern of behavior? Can we start finding the people who come all the time? I will tell you, love you guys. We have a set of core HighRoad users. They are loyal. They come all the time. You know, that's great. That says something about, you know, them. Or we have to ask the question, what does that say? You know, that kind of thing. Other kinds of pieces, are people talking about you? Is there word of mouth spreading? And again, ultimately, we would all like to know the cost per qualified lead, right? So if we could know it's going to cost us this amount of money to gain a new member company, right? Those types of things has been very difficult for marketers to be able to substantiate over the years, because how do you do that in direct mail? I mean, you're like estimating a process, but you never had the feedback loop. What marketers love about digital is there's a feedback loop. That's why a lot of times digital marketers get uncomfortable with live events, because you can't measure them. It wrecks our kind of a schema of how we're going to measure things. We would love everything to be digital because we can see the spend, we can see what happened, and we can see what happened with this person. We want to see the entire timeline of all their interactions with us, because then you can measure and say it costs us this much. We have something that we can use. When you kind of have that mixed kind of experience, which of course we're going to have, it's not as clean, right? It's not as clean. But these types of things can help you to understand that, all right? And then finally, here we've got the budget, right? So this is kind of the piece we have to do. We have to hire speakers, etc. That's where your kind of production costs come in, those types of things. I would also, on the webinar and the production cost here, this says this has the cost of the platform. I would also try to add in here some sort of partial cost for, again, not just the platform, but there might be, I put in something about the time factor. You know, associations have long thought of their staff as free labor. Okay, it's not free. So we need to have some sort of cost in here, not just the platform, but I think if you wanted to do it really accurately, the labor costs of what that looks like, because that's going to also help you to understand, are you as efficient as you can be with your staff, right? Are there other ways to do it? It helps you innovate. If you always think of people as free, it's very hard to innovate in an organization, right? Because there is no check and balance on what they're doing, and it's very difficult to see if they're being productive. The looking always at kind of the labor cost helps us to understand What are ways that we can innovate to drive that forward? But kind of another kind of nice point there. And that's it for the whole toolkit. So once I would fill that out, and then I'd lose the back cover if I was doing this again for my own association. But you've got now, once I filled all that out, we've got a complete webinar marketing plan that is really rock solid, right? I've got my table of contents, I'm all lined up there. And I've really got something now substantial to be able to present to others. And even if I just do it for my own edification, what I have is clarity. I have clarity, and I'm able to convey that to others. What's the purpose? What's it going to cost us? What are we going to get out of it? Why should we do it? Who does it affect? We've got all of those things kind of at the ready, and that makes for a solid business case. So that is this month's Toolkit of the Month. Happy to get any questions over chat, or if you want to send those in to us via email, we'll be happy to answer those. We'll put it out on the blog as our response. With that, I say thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time at HighRoad U.